In compliance with Chapter 231 of the Open Public Meeting Acts of the State of New Jersey, adequate notice having been given to all members of the governing body, the local source, and the Westfield Leader, and the two newspapers designated to receive such notice. This notice is also posted on the Borough Hall bulletin board. We're going to first stand for a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Martha, can we also have a roll call?
Councilwoman Andre?
Here.
Councilman Lane?
Here.
Councilman Messler?
Here.
Councilman Mortimer?
Here.
Councilman Turner?
Here.
Councilman Watts is absent.
Again, I'd ask everyone to stand because we're going to have the invocation from Council President Turner.
Dear Lord, thank you for keeping Mountainside and its residents safe during one of the worst natural disasters ever to hit New Jersey. Yes, we were without power, a little colder, and perhaps more frustrated for several days, but we were safe. Please watch over those who were not as fortunate and those that are truly in need. Our thoughts and prayers go out to those families that lost loved ones, their homes, and their livelihoods. Continue to keep our police, fire, rescue, and public works departments safe during our recovery. Guide us in our decisions so that we may continue to keep our residents safe. Please continue to bow your heads in a moment of silence for the 47 residents of New Jersey whose lives were lost during the storm. Amen.
Thank you, Keith. The first thing that I'd like to do, I do see a number of the police and fire and rescue squad here tonight, as well as some members of the Public Works. So I would ask any of them that are sitting to please stand up, and the ones that are in the back, if they could come forward, please. Come on forward, rescue, police, and the fire department.
Come on, Lou. Come on up, Lieutenant, Captain, come on up.
Come on, make room for everybody, you guys. Come on, let's go.
Spread out.
Go ahead.
Spread out, spread down.
Okay, I'd like to read a resolution of commendation in connection with Hurricane Sandy. Whereas the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Mountainside would like to extend our thoughts and prayers to those affected by Superstorm Sandy, especially those who are still coping with injury, lack of basic necessities, or loss of property or life. Whereas while we commend the efforts of all emergency responders and volunteers who have come forward to help, including police, our dispatchers, our fire, our rescue squad, our DPW, our borough staff, religious and civic organizations, the state of New Jersey, FEMA, and countless residents for their unprecedented response to a storm that tested our patience and resolve. Whereas we would like to further extend a special thanks to Cindy West, Corinne Moore, Vivian Hoff, Debbie McMahon, and Nancy Spadaccini for organizing a Superstorm Sandy relief donation drive on November 10th, 11th, and 12th at Our Lady of Lourdes Church to assist those in need throughout our area during this very difficult time. Whereas they collected donations of dried, non-perishable food, clothing, cleaning supplies, paper products, blankets, pet supplies, baby products, baby food, and other miscellaneous items. Whereas donations were transported and dispersed among the following areas: Union Beach, New Jersey; Manasquan, New Jersey; Tunnel to Towers, the Filler Foundation, Staten Island, New York, the Linden Food Pantry, and the Linden Animal Shelter. Whereas we thank and commend the members of our community for supporting the donation drive and at this very challenging time, and we encourage everyone to continue their generosity and volunteerism in assisting our fellow citizens. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and the council of the Borough of Mountainside extend a heartfelt thanks to everyone for their outstanding community spirit, resilience, and for working together to pull through successfully as the great community we know as Mountainside. I specifically want to thank everyone that's standing here today in front of you, as well as the other police, fire department, rescue squad, and DPWs, as well as other volunteers. There's particularly one gentleman that I would like to mention. I was up on Summit Road on Tuesday morning, and I was approached by an Andrew Zecca, who sort of reminded me of one of my relatives. He was a little Italian guy about this high, and we were standing in front of trees that had fallen on Summit Road. He came out. I was there with Jim Debbie and Ron Romack, and he looked at us and he says, "Who do I talk to about trying to help to remove these trees?" And I said, "You got the right person." He said, "I got a backhoe over here." He pulled the backhoe out of his driveway of his house, and we followed him up Summit Road, and he cleared all the trees up Summit Road, and we got a pathway to Overlook Hospital on Tuesday, which was the day after the storm. It was the only direct route to Overlook Hospital. I understand Shumpike was closed, and it was through efforts like gentlemen like Mr. Zecca, the residents of this town that pulled us through this storm, which was of unprecedented magnitude. I want to thank you all. Thanks, guys. You don't have to stand in the front the whole time. Now, normally, we would wait till the end of our meeting to have some audience participation. I see a number of members of the public here, and rather than have you wait through some of the mundane things that we do with these council meetings, I thought I would open up the audience participation portion of the program at the very outset. I would like the comments to be really related to the storm. If you have anyone from the public that's here that wants to discuss something else, I would ask that you wait till the end. We do have a rule in that each person is entitled to 5 minutes. Anyone that wants to speak, they need to come forward to the mic, give us their name and address. So anyone that wants to come forward and speak, we welcome you. Now, come on, I can't believe there's nobody.
Can I turn this? Jim Gallagher, 1126 Ridge Drive. I hate to turn it back on you guys, but I think everyone's here because we'd like to hear a summary of how you as a body think you did. I know I speak for one, having followed Ron out of his driveway at 5 in the morning for those 2 weeks. People, emergency responders, law enforcement did a wonderful job. I know I had to pick a lot of people up to drive to New York for several days after that and couldn't get around other towns. I couldn't get my kids to school 2 weeks later. So I know people might disagree in sort of details, but in general, my review of this town was, from a DPW perspective, it was great.
Thank you.
My assessment is the communication didn't match that, and it didn't match the magnitude of the storm. So I hate to turn it back on you guys, but would you mind giving an honest assessment of how you think you did?
I'm gonna address the public after all the comments are being made, because I have a feeling that some of the comments are going to be repetitive. So we appreciate your comments, and if you have something else to say, that's fine. If not, then we want to hear from somebody else. I will address that, though.
Fair enough. I guess all I would add is there have been reviews, no one was gonna get this right. It's a storm without a precedent. I think that's fair. Really, I hope, if nothing else, we get 2 months from now and actually can see some tangible progress in having an idea of what to do. Because at the end of the day, nobody knew what to do. And that, I don't know where that failure really and whose feet that sits at, nor do I care. I just know as a resident that the next time something happens like this, because it's been 3 years in a row, not your performance, but 3 storms of the century, 3 years in a row. Let's just try to figure it out. You've got people in this audience who can help. You've got people that do it in the private sector. You've got people that do emergency response in the public sector. You might not want that help. I think the people are here tonight because they do want to help. And I'll leave you guys with that.
Thank you.
I'm Mike Lamb. I live on Raccoon Hollow, and I just want to say I think you guys did a good job. I mean, all we did was lose electric, and considering what happened to the rest of the state, that's not bad. And I think DPW is cleaning up nice. Communication, listen, you lost electric. Come on, give me a break. You got to wait for PSNG to come here. We got to wait for guys from Illinois, Missouri. Come on, you know what I mean? If that's all we lost, that's not bad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, everybody. Carlos Gomez, Deer Path. Like to thank the emergency services, police, fire, EMS, DPW. They did an excellent job. I did drive around other towns, and there was a lot of trees blocking the roadways. I'd like to thank Councilman Messler. He communicated to us on the day, and I suggested something, and it actually happened within a half hour. So the only thing, I'm in emergency services. I've been doing it for 15 years. The only thing I feel that the storm lacked of was the community in general. And with the new technology and people are tech savvy, they felt like they were lost with communications from the council, from the emergency services. They were kind of stuck in their house waiting to see what happens. They were receiving more information from like Westfield or neighboring towns, and they were updating, like councilmen were updating their Twitters. And I know not everybody follows Twitter, and I've heard this before. I have seniors that live right by me, but I relayed information to my senior neighbors because I received it via my computer device on my phone. And then my neighbors thanked me. Oh, thank you. I appreciate the feedback. I didn't know. That was the answer. They didn't know. So, you know, in OEM, Turner, you're the OEM coordinator? There's 4 stages. You know, there's mitigation, planning, recovery, and response. A lot of all those stages have a communication section to it. And I have a little piece here. The most cited failures or weaknesses at a disaster is communications, which it's hard to communicate. I mean, it was a natural disaster. It's hard to tell everybody you're okay. But sometimes hundreds of people can see one message, and then they could tell 3 of their neighbors. That means that's 600 people, you know, that's right away by just typing a line. So we feel like Jim Gallagher said, if in the future you guys were to participate in something like that, you know, social media and just informing the public. And I thank the recreation, see one of the guys, for their updates. And you know, I know there was some negative comments, but we're looking to the future. There's going to be more storms, and we just want to be better prepared and have everybody communicate together. All right? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. See a lot of people out there. No more comments? I had a feeling, Gene, you weren't gonna be quiet.
Because I love the microphone. Hi, Jeannie Parker, 370 Rolling Rock Road. I would like to say that I have been here before after storms, and for those of you that haven't been here, I think that the council is generally receptive. They listen to what you say, they answer complaints, if they don't have an answer to your question, they will get back to you. That said, and it's also, as I know, a lot harder to sit up there sometimes than it looks from back there. This job is not as easy, none of these jobs are as easy as they look. But that said, Mr. Mayor and everybody else, anybody who's elected to a position in this town asked for the job, people gave us that job, and I think we have an obligation to do that job. And at the end of the day, whether Paul and whether you think you did your best or I think I did my best at something, it doesn't matter if 25 people or 50 people or 100 people in a town think you didn't do your best. And that's the thing. We can say, oh, we did the best we could, but if people can point to concrete and specific examples of where things were done better in other towns, or that maybe we didn't think of before, or where it was just a more efficient communication, I think that the council maybe would want to go back and look at it, and maybe you guys are, I don't know, because and say, okay, what can we do next time? What can we put in place? And I would hope that, given the number of people who seem to be upset about this, that they would participate. I can't remember where I read it. Some town, the mayor started an ad hoc council of citizens. I think they have 1 or 2 council members on it, and they're looking at where they fell short, what they did well, and what they could do better. Maybe we could have something like that. And if we did, I would put my hand up to help. And I would hope that everybody else who is unhappy would put their hands up too, because, at the end of the day, in a town this small, if you see something that's broken and you don't pitch in to fix it, then, you're just as much as fault as the people that you're pointing fingers at. And we all have a responsibility to do something. And I would hope that you guys can come up with something that we could all work together and get something done, because it seems like a very simple fix. It's not brain surgery. You do a lot tougher stuff every day up there. So that's all. I'll shut up now.
Anyone else want to come up? Well, you're sitting there maybe thinking about coming up. I do want to address the communication issue. Specifically, and I guess fortunately, we did have a plan in place. It was called Union County First Alert. We've been promoting it for over a year. It's a very simple service that you can sign up for. They started issuing alerts on Friday the 26th, and I know they continue to issue alerts. The alerts come via a text message. It also comes via the email. Unfortunately, only about 1,500 people in Mountainside signed up for the service, despite the fact that it was promoted for over a year and a half. It's been on the bulletin board. Every time you walk into Borough Hall, there's a flyer on the police dispatch window which says, sign up for Union County First Alert. It's a very simple thing to do. Al in the back, if anyone has any questions on how to do it, he can help you do it. It's very simple. You just go online. I think it's www.al.
It's on the back of the agenda.
Their handouts.
Okay, it's on the back of the agenda where anyone can sign up. So, like I said, we had a plan in place. Unfortunately, a lot of people didn't sign up for it. The second, I guess, tier of any communication, and especially in a town like Mountainside, is through the police department and the dispatch. Dispatch fielded over 3,916 calls, from anywhere from when are we gonna get our power back to, is there gonna be garbage pickup on, during the week, right after the storm, okay? They were giving out the best information that they possibly could. One of the problems that we ran into was that PSE&G was really not giving us reliable information. The only reliable information that they were giving us is they expected power to be restored in somewhere between 7 and 10 days. And that's what the police were telling anyone that called up and wanted to know when power was going to be restored. I can tell you that during the first week after the storm, I was on a PSE&G conference call every morning at 10 o'clock. And the information that we got was not reliable at all. So passing on unreliable information was something that we did not want to do. We were told certain things about when we would have trucks in town, when they would start doing things to get our power restored, and it turned out simply not to be true. They were telling us that we were gonna have crews in town. Let me just back up for a minute. The first conference call, they indicated to us that the priorities would be hospitals, public service facilities, and schools. We have a hospital in town, Children's Specialized Hospital. I was on them repeatedly as to if that was the first priority, why were we not getting power to Children's Specialized Hospital? I repeatedly asked them that, and their response was, and it was a fairly typical response, was, well, you know, we got 95% of the other hospitals up and running, and simply that was not satisfactory. So we pressed them for, you know, not only when they were gonna do it, but how they were gonna do it, because that was something that was a mystery to me. I didn't see any trucks in town, so I don't know how they expected to get power back to Children's Specialized Hospital without seeing any tree trucks, pole trucks, and line trucks in town. Eventually, on Thursday, okay, 3 days after the storm, we started to see a couple of trucks on New Providence Road. They fixed a couple of poles over there, and by Thursday night, around 11 o'clock, Children's Specialized Hospital finally did get power back. But we didn't know that Children's Specialized had power until the power was turned on. PSE&G wasn't saying Thursday night you're gonna have power. They weren't saying you're gonna have 2 trucks in town that are gonna help you get the power. As a result of the hospital getting power, there were some residents in the immediate vicinity of Children's Specialized Hospital that did get power. We continued to press them in the conference calls about when Mountainside was gonna get power, when we were getting trucks. And they kept telling us they're gonna come out with an action plan. We, in the first day after the storm, the protocol was that our police department and public works department and our emergency management was to put together a list of what what we felt the priorities were. We had over 30 poles that were either cracked, leaning, or down. We had trees down everywhere. We sent them that list. Every time we asked them about this list, they acted like they never received it, and we know that it went from Union County Emergency Management to PSE&G. We had trucks in here for 3 days, pickup trucks from PSE&G that were going around assessing the damage. Every time we would approach them and say, we can help you assess the damage, they did not want our help. It became very frustrating to deal with PSE&G because the information that they were giving us was just not reliable. The other tier of communication that I guess I was a little disappointed is I see a lot of familiar faces out there in the crowd. so do members of council. I received very few phone calls to find out, asking me what was going on. Everyone, my cell phone is plastered all over this town. It's up on the bulletin board out there half the time. So, you know, especially in a small community like Mountainside, that's the way to, you know, get the word out, okay? I also understand that there is some frustration about the communication. Jeannie asked if we had any plans to try to address that. What we are gonna be doing is we're having a new committee that's gonna be formed. It's gonna be called the Media and Information Committee. Glenn Mortimer is gonna be the chairman of that. Deanna Andre is gonna be on that, and so is Bob Messler. Their charge is to come up with an efficient and economically responsible way to communicate in a situation like this. If there are any members of the public that would also like to participate in that committee, if you give your contact information to Jim Debbie, when they meet, you will be invited, and we welcome your comments as to how you think things can be improved. You know, Mountainside, and one of the things we pride ourselves on, and I stress this, to be efficient and economically responsible. Sure, it's an easy fix. We can get Honeywell in here for $20,000, and we can have a system where we can call every resident in Mountainside and tell them what's going on, provided we can get through to Honeywell to do that, okay? But that's $20,000. That committee is gonna look at options like that. And if anyone has any input, like I said, that they wanna participate with that committee, you can, like I said, give your information to Jim Debbie. As far as the other comment that I heard is, you know, people want to know, what did we do? Okay, I can tell you that from before the storm started, I was in communication with Jim Debbie and Ron Womack, our DPU director, in the days preceding the storm, as to what we were doing to get ready for the storm. I know that DPW was out, you know, cleaning stormwater sewers to make sure that they were, you know, clear, especially with all the leaves. I know that all the equipment was checked to make sure that it was properly working, chainsaws and the like. We made sure everything was gassed up. One of the most important things that was done was that the generator at the firehouse and the generator here at Borough Hall was checked to make sure that if and when the power went out, that the generators were kicked on. All that was looked at, and I specifically had those discussions with Jim and Ron Womack. In fact, Ron was on a trip out to Arizona. He was due to come back on Monday. He came back on Saturday to make sure that we were, in fact, ready for the storm. Shortly after Governor Christie declared a state of emergency on Sunday, I met with Council President Turner, who's also our OEM director, and we also signed a declaration, an emergency declaration, because to make sure that any fund, not only because we knew it was an emergency, but more importantly, that any funds that would become available afterwards, we would have access to. On Monday, once the storm started to hit, I was down here with Ron, with Jim, with Keith, making sure, number one, that we had our tree service guy in town. I was listening to what dispatch was doing. The trees started falling, I would say, by 12 o'clock on Monday, and they were doing the best they could to keep the roads clear. Dispatch did a fabulous job. We just couldn't keep up with the trees that were falling. Monday night, I brought a police radio home, and listening to the dispatchers, it was like the OK Corral out there. Trees were falling, lines were falling, fires were started, And one of the things that is truly remarkable is the calm and efficient nature that everybody acted, from the dispatchers to the fire department, to the police department, and to the DPW department. They worked tirelessly, especially on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Our goal was to get the town, get access to every single house in Mountainside as quickly as we could. Tuesday morning, I was down here again. There was that was when I believe that was when the first conference call started with PSE&G. They were just completely overwhelmed. They didn't even know what to say to people. They told us they had 5 substations down, they had 6 feet of water. They were just trying to put as good a face on it as possible. Our response, though, was, again, we had our tree guy out there trying to clear roads. Myself, Keith, Ron, and Jim Debbie were out on Route 22 because that was blocked. There was a tree down in the westbound lane. We were able to clear, and DOT had an excavator out there, but they wouldn't touch the tree because it was wrapped in wires. We went out there, we tested the wires, we got them off the tree. DOT came in and pushed it pushed it out of the way, and it opened up Route 22. So Route 22 in Mountainside was open Tuesday morning after the storm. Fast forward a little bit to about noon, that's when we were up on Summit Road trying to get that clear. The main focus was to get the roads cleared, especially the main roads, which was very difficult. Most of the trees were entangled in wires. You know, Summit Road is a county road. The county was overwhelmed. We couldn't wait for the county to come in and clear that road. So we took it upon ourselves to do it. Thank for Mr. Decker, who came out and helped us. He did a fabulous job. He knew exactly what he was doing, and we walked up Summit Road, and that was clear. Throughout the day, I would say sometime probably by Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, we had access to every single home in Mountainside. It might not have been direct access, because some trees were down blocking roads, but you could get to every house if you had to, especially in an emergency. You know, as the days went on, we just continued to do the same things that we had done from the very beginning. I would come down in the morning, I would get on the conference call with PSE&G. There was then conference calls going on with the county. I was also involved in those calls. Keith Turner was also involved in the PSE&G conference calls. And one of the problems with PSE&G is their action plan, because we would press them for when we were going to get trucks in town. They would say, don't worry, we'll email you an action plan. I thought it was like 5 trucks were going to Mountainside, 3 trucks in Scotch Plains. What it was a grid that said how many people they thought they were going to restore power to in day 1, day 2, and day 3, none of which really meant anything to us. The first day they told us we had 1,600 people without power in Mountainside. I knew for a fact we had 2,400 or 2,500 people without power in Mountainside. The next day, when I asked them again, they said, oh, now there's only 1,000 people. I said, really? You got 600 people that got power in one day? I said, that's absolutely not true. I would say 95, maybe 100% of us didn't have power. It wasn't until the third day that they came out and said that they had 2,300 people in Mountainside that were without power. And their plan was 200 this day, 300 this day, 400 the next day. Not how many trucks we're going to get in town. So any information that we were getting from PSE&G, other than that your power was going to be back in 7 to 10 days, was unreliable. I think it was around either November 1st or so that Deanna, Andre, was able to get a statement out on the recreation Facebook page. Even though it went out on recreation, it was done by the mayor and council. If you looked at those messages, it was signed the mayor and council. Wasn't the most efficient way to do it, but it was the only access that we had to anything other than Union County first alert. Our email was down, our server was down for a while. We had some difficulties in getting that information out. I could go on and on about the specifics of what happened and what our involvement was, but I think the proof is in the fact that, you know, our roads were cleared, I think, before almost any other roads in any of the surrounding towns, okay? We've recently hired a second tree company who's been going through the town picking up the debris. I know a question is gonna be, what are we gonna pick up? At this point, initially, I think we put it out on the web page that we were gonna take any debris that fell because of a tree in the borough right-of-way, any trees that fell in the street, and any other trees that were of 12 inches or less in diameter, provided that they were stacked on your property, in the front of your house, and not in the street. Since we've had a meeting with FEMA, we're expanding what we are going to be picking up, and basically anything that is storm-related, and I stress storm-related, not pruning and trees you wanted to take down for the last 5 years that now you decided to take down, that you stack on your property on your property in front of your house will be picked up. It'll take a while because there's a lot of trees down. We estimated about 800 trees fell in Mountainside. I believe it was 32 hit houses, but only 3 of them caused the houses to be uninhabitable. So we're gonna try and pick up, you know, anything that is storm related, as long as you put it on your property. Please do not put it in the street. You know, it blocks the streets, it causes a public safety hazard, and if we ever got a snowstorm with debris in the streets, we wouldn't be able to clear them. Oh, the only other thing I wanted to address, because I'm going on too long, and some people are looking at me, telling me to be quiet, but as the snowstorm started to approach, at that point, you know, the main concern in getting all the roads open, you know, that was under control. So we had some concerns about the snowstorm. I discussed this specifically with, again, Ron Romack. He had our snow contractor place several of the salters in town, because initially the forecast was for somewhere less than 3 inches. We figured with salt and how warm the roads were, that hopefully that would cover it. Just to hedge our bets, we also had the contractor bring some plows in and station them in the town in case the snowstorm got worse. And in fact, it did. And we had the plows here, and fortunately, we got them out overnight. And by, I guess it was Thursday morning, was the morning after the storm, the roads in Mountainside, at least every road had at least one lane cleared for everyone to be able to pass. So, you know, I hope that I've addressed the communication issue. I do realize that there are some ways to improve it, and certainly I hope the committee that we're going to form and the people that are sitting out there that sound like they can give us some good, meaningful contribution as to how we can handle things will correct what I guess some people feel was something that was not done properly, and that was the communication. Fortunately, our town is in good shape now. We're cleaning up. We have a good crew in town that's picking up all the debris. And I hope I've answered some of your concerns. If there's anybody that has any other concerns that want to speak to me, that's fine. I do think that some of the other council people may have some comments as to what, I've gone on long enough, so I don't know if any other council people want to address the storm itself.
I was involved with the daily communications as well with PSE&G and the conference calls. I specifically asked one question every time. And just so you know, it wasn't just our community that was involved with the conference calls with PSE&G. It was Westfield, it was Fanwood, it was Scotch Plains, it was some communities in Warren. Any town or municipality that was serviced by PSE&G, it was strongly suggested and recommended that they do participate in these conference calls. I specifically asked, could you please give me some updates as to when our power is going to be back on? The answer I was always given was no. Tell your residents we're working on the problems. I think we're all bright enough to realize that our power was out and we didn't know when it was going to be put back on. And that's what we were being told. And when we began, we realized that not many people signed up for UC First Alert. Deanna and myself, I forget who else was down here, tried to get onto our server to put information out on our webpage. We realized our server was down. That took some time to get that up. We had our IT people on the phone. We were, I'll be honest with you, we were scrambling, trying to figure out a way to get some information out, and that's why we decided to use the recreation website. And Deanna and I worked on that and were able to get at least some information out. As far as the other communities putting out information, like I said, I don't know where they heard that information from. They were giving out specific days, they were giving out specific numbers. We were on the same conference calls. They never said that. To put out misinformation, I think would put us in hotter water than some of you would like to put us in. Because if that didn't occur, if we put out a specific date and said, 50% of the community is going to be back up by Wednesday, and God help us if it wasn't back up by Wednesday. So again, I'm a big proponent of trying to get accurate, concise, truthful information out to the residents of the borough. Misinformation, in my opinion, is just never a good idea. Could we improve on it? May there be other avenues that we could try to communicate with the residents? I'd be the first one. My eyes and ears are always open to suggestions. It was very, very frustrating when they were telling us it was a switching station one day, then it was a circuit in Fanwood that was down. I personally met with the president of PSE&G, I believe it was November 1st, with a couple of other mayors and OEM people in Scotch Plains. I believe it was November 1st. At that time, we were being told that this was 3 or 4 days after the storm, or 5 days after the storm, 86% of our residents were still without power by their own report. We were being told that there were 4 work crews in town when I was checking with the police department and they counted 12 work crews in town. They didn't even know when the crews were in town and or the number of crews that were in town. They were inundated, PSE&G. I'm sure they did the best they could given the circumstances. I'm sure they can do better. It always feels, and I'm sure every community feels this way, it felt to me like Mountainside was again the last town to get up and running. I know my street on Bridle Path was probably one of the last ones, and oh no, that's right, Bill was. And Prospect, that's right, my brother-in-law was calling me on Prospect saying, are you kidding me? And then it went on for a couple of hours, and then it went out again, and and then the low water pressure for 2.5 days, I said that, you know, that's all we need. But just to reassure the residents, you know, I was trying to think of, I mean, there are lists and days, we were in constant communication with each other. Our front line is the police department, our volunteer fire department, our public works department, and when the emergency truly arises, hopefully, you know, not needed, our rescue squad. But I can tell you that both prior to, during, and after the storm, all emergencies were addressed by those same people. After the storm, Carlos, you commented, preliminary damage assessments were initiated to determine the extent of the disaster, its impact on our public facilities, which individuals needed help, our infrastructure. Union County OEM was notified. Maps of blocked roadways were developed as the trees were coming down, as the telephone poles were coming down. It was somewhere between 28 and 36 hours, according to our Public Works Director. Every road that could be made passable in Mountainside safely, and I hesitate to say this, and sometimes not so safely, was opened. We couldn't cut a telephone pole laying across our roadway, but every road that could have been made accessible was made accessible. According to what we've been told, not one home after that period of time, and we can't put an exact time on it was definitely within 36 hours, was accessible by any emergency vehicle. It may not have been a direct route to your home, but we were assured that we could get to your home. PSE&G was being contacted immediately as wires were down and poles were broken and outages occurred. The daily conference calls with PSE&G and Union County began one day after the storm. Most, if not all of us, were involved with those conference calls. As soon as the low pressure was realized by the community, we were told that was a flooded station on Jerusalem Road in Scotch Plains. That didn't really make me happy when I woke up in the morning to brush my teeth and take a shower, and there was no water. And I went into panic mode at that point, because you never think, you know, when a storm arises, fill up a bathtub. You know, we all need to heed this storm. The old rule of thumb was 2 or 3 days, 4 or 5 days. It's not enough. It's 10 days. It's 2 weeks. Edible food, food that we could store properly. Gasoline. I didn't think I would need cash, to go stay in line, because the few gas stations that were opened up were only taking cash. So, and the banks were closed. I mean, it was just one thing after another. We met with a state senator, Tom Keene. I did everything but beg for information. I even begged for information. State Assemblyman Bramnick, both Paul and I were contacting him almost on a daily basis, asking for help. All vital resources and parties, between the parties, was constant. Again, we had one volunteer that's building a house in Mountainside. We had other people in town who offered up heavy equipment, and we did this before the storm started. Mountainside has 5 public works people and 3 pickup trucks. We can't move a tree, and it's because of our residents that are in the construction business. Frank Barone, Nick Birdie, somebody else building a house on Bridle Path, Lenny Latour, the gentleman Andrew Vecca, I think is his name.
Anthony. Zecca.
Zecca?
No, Andrew Zecca.
Huge help with his equipment. It happened to be at the right place at the right time. I mean, a lot of things were going on. It seems like as we were trying to put out one fire, another fire was starting. Did we do the best we could, given the circumstances? I mean, I don't know if that's for me to decide. That's up, to the residents to decide. Are we gonna be able to please 100% of the people 100% of the time? I learned that many, many years ago that that's impossible. If anybody has suggestions for any of us, for the town, please let us know. We're here to serve you. So if you have ideas that are helpful to the community, that can help us, in the next storm, and there will be a next storm. Hopefully it won't be as bad as this, but it could be worse than this. So we need to really, rule number one is prepare for yourself. The community does have an obligation, along with the county OEM and the federal OEM, better known as FEMA, to help its residents of each municipality, county, and state. But it starts at home. You know, after 2 or 3 days, I was looking for batteries. And in a state of emergency, I might add, you're not supposed to be driving around. It's for emergency vehicles only. So that makes it even worse. And we're all scrambling, those of us with generators. Again, I saw extension wires across roadways, which isn't the best idea in the world. Neighbors helping neighbors. Those of us that had generators asking neighbors to plug in. Being invited over to those of us that had water, some didn't have water. But that's what makes Mountainside what it is. And again, anybody that has any information can contact me directly, any of the council people. You know, I live right on Bridle Path. If you see me, stop and talk to me. I welcome it. Okay, thank you.
Just 1 second, I think there's two people, I think in particular, that would like to say something. Right.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Stolfi. I live on Stony Brook Lane, and I think some of my neighbors are here from Stony Brook. I'm not sure if you're aware of the issue that goes on with Stony Brook. If it's a 10-mile-per-hour wind, we lose our power. And I've only lived in Mountainside for 3 years, and I'm going to verify this with my neighbors, but I believe in the last 3 years, we've lost power for at least 3 days, this time 10 days. In the last 18 months, guys? Yes. I'm wondering if you're aware of that, or if we're so unusual on Stony Brook. We seem to be the first to lose our power. We seem to be one of the last
It hits us,
streets.
though. I mean, it goes from Stony Brook right down to Bridle Path.
And we know that, except sometimes on the 8th or the 9th night when we're looking at, you're watching your TVs and we're not.
Let's have a generator.
So we're wondering about that loss. And as you brought up, that there's probably going to be a next time. If, as much as you've tried, PSEG has seemed to be non-responsive, or certainly have not been upfront and honest. We're wondering how you're going to change your plan for the next time, so that perhaps we're all better served.
Part of the problem is the infrastructure. If you drive around most communities, you could see what used to be telephone poles that are now called utility poles, and the new ones that, and I think that's what, again, I don't know, PSE&G was overwhelmed. I really don't want to be, don't hang me for this, too hard on them, but they were really overwhelmed. Some of their own transfer stations and switching stations, we were being told are 80, 90, years old and need a ton of work. And to do that work in a crisis is never gonna work.
I absolutely agree with you.
What they were doing now is they're bringing, I think what dragged this along, not only were they trying to fix the problems to get us electricity back, I think they were trying to upgrade in addition to fix the problem. It didn't just pay to connect the wire. If a pole was leaning a little bit in years past, they would just connect it and the pole would just be leaning a little bit more. I think this time they went around and I think we're gonna see them. I'm hopeful that we're gonna see them, and I can assure you that we're gonna be on top of it. If you just drive around town, look at the condition of some of the utility poles. Look at the amount of wires that have been added to those utility poles, the Verizons, the Comcasts, and you name it, the telephone wires. And it seems as though every time somebody adds something, they don't take their own stuff down. They just keep on adding, and that adds weight to whatever's going on. Again, I'm not an expert in that. I've been living in Mountainside for a very, very long time, and it seems as though whenever the wind blows just a little bit, my power is lost. I have 2 sump pumps in my basement. My basement has been flooded more times than I can tell you, and I've tried the battery backups. And
I did
nothing
contact
works.
their offices and spoke to the executive secretary of the president is it Mr. LaRusso? I can't. okay.
LaRusso.
LaRusso. And they said that they would be sending out an engineer to check the grid on Stony Brook Lane. But I would love it if I could have the backing of you to say that that's something that you guys would follow up on as well. Might affect your power as well.
There was a replaced in front of my house about a year and a half ago. They put the new pole in,
Mhm.
and the old one's sitting right next to it, with some wires still on it. And
But
I've told them about it for a year and a half,
okay,
and it's still there.
okay, okay.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To the extent we're supporting you.
Hi, my name is Lori Palatino, and I live at 258 Bridle Path. And I want to thank you for your recap on the storm, but I really think, and I know I speak for a bunch of people, I think it would have been great if we would have gotten that as the storm was going on. And I did sign up for the UC alert, and there really was not that much communications, like in regards to what was going on. I just think people were so frustrated over that, and I understand you're gonna address it, but a great opportunity, like, because there was no power, people didn't have phones, so on, would have been when people were voting, to have a councilman at each polling station to update residents. It's just very upsetting when you're out there and there is no communication. And I just want to make that comment.
Thank you.
Paul, can I comment on?
Sure.
First, I'll address the communication issue. I think we could have done better. I think that there were methods of communication that, because of the storm, were unsuccessful. I know personally and professionally, I'm not big into the social media, and I don't have a Facebook. I think I'm probably gonna be tortured just because I said that, but I've never had one. And I did not think, to be honest with you, I did not have the forethought to think that it would be necessary. I don't desire to have a personal one, to be honest with you. And, but to the extent that that is a form of communication that could help, I would favor it. I'm not on the media and information committee, but listen, I recognize that there were things that we could have done better. I think that what we did do well is, I think the town was run very well. By that I mean that the emergency services were all monitored. I think many of us continued to be involved in making sure the town was safe. But I think that if there was an area where we were probably lacking, was in the communication. My personal opinion, I'm not speaking for the entire council. I think that the idea, and it was actually, I think, a conversation the mayor and I had about having a committee. We used to have a committee, the Channel 35 committee, and I suggested maybe if we expanded that, changed the name of it, that could look into things like media and communication, or media and information, alternate ways to communicate, whether it be during normal business hours or normal times, or times of trouble and emergency. I think that, I actually spoke to Andy Skavitsky, mayor of Westfield, who I consider to be a friend, because he did a remarkable job in his town. He deserves applause. I think Governor Christie gave a shout out to him on 101.5. And I think a lot of people were comparing us to him, and he should be commended for it. Like I said, I think the business of the town, our emergency personnel, our DPW, and did an excellent job, and I think the running of the town, and the extent that we remained involved in that and running of the town, I think we did a good job. To those of you frustrated by the loss of power, I share in your frustration. I can tell you, and to pardon the pun, we were absolutely powerless, both literally and figuratively. PSE&G in my communications, they were they didn't provide us with information. There was nothing that could have been said that could have changed things. We were a priority on this, we were a low priority on this particular storm. I spoke to someone, and I don't know whether all this is accurate information, but there was a total of like 600 linemen that worked for PSE&G, and they had $2 million outages. So they relied heavily upon out-of-state contractors. My power was restored, and I know I wasn't the last, but I think I was maybe 12 hours before the last. I got power late Saturday evening, whatever day it was, the 13th day. And, you know, my crew came in from Oklahoma, and I told them I would forever be a Sooners fan. And they just been driving up from Oklahoma. I can't remember. I think they stopped somewhere else beforehand. PSE&G was relying upon all these out-of-state crews. And but I hope you all understand that there was nothing more we could have done to get power on sooner. I can tell you, I thought my wife was going to kill me. I mean, she was looking for, her power as well, and it was a difficult time for everybody. But again, and the other thing is, we're talking about how the information we got was lacking, and it wasn't always accurate. I mean, I had one communication, I was told, sir, we're down to the last 38 houses in Mountainside. I said, I know of 350 that are still out. And they haven't been reported yet. I said, we're on our 12th day, sir. If they haven't, I would be shocked if you're not aware of every home in this town that hasn't been. So, listen, I'm not looking at PSE&G as a scapegoat. Like I said, it was a difficult storm. They were understaffed. Those are my comments on communication. I hear you. I think we all hear you, and I hope that we'll make some changes that will. Hopefully, we never have this kind of experience again. But in the event that we do, that maybe we can improve on the communication that I think people have been concerned about. I'd like to just take a minute to talk about. I am the commissioner of the fire department, and I want to. They were commended by our mayor before, but I want to just kind of go through a report that our chief, and the chief and I were in constant communication throughout the storm. And this is just some of the things that our fire department did with respect to the storm. And I will not take long, because I know this is going on longer than everyone may have anticipated. Number one, 15 firefighters came down Sunday night before the storm for storm preparation. All the fire engines and generators and saws were fueled. All the pumps were tested. When the storm hit on the evening of the 29th to the 30th, 15 members were standing by at the firehouse for any and all calls. Everyone had specific riding assignments, so there were no confusions. The chief and other firefighters stayed at the firehouse for 10 days. This is a volunteer fire department, and we had members of our fire department, including our chief, stay at that fire department so that they can address any concerns that the community had. And there were certainly lots of concerns. The fire department responded to approximately 60 calls in 10 days, and I don't know whether that's an under approximation, but that's the last information I had, ranging from things as trees down on houses that they help residents to trees across roads, to carbon dioxide calls. There were many of those. There was a possible house fire, which, as it turned out, was not a house fire, but one that was originally suspected to be a house fire. They cut up trees to make roads passable for emergency vehicles. They helped the rescue squad by, one gentleman who was wheelchair bound, they helped him, helped the rescue squad remove him from the home. They've had, I don't want to, just I think today, they had 2 extrications from automobiles in this town with some very serious automobile accidents. They've had, and prior to that, they had done several other in the last several months. Their generators were used, one was used to utilize, to power the traffic light at Route 22 in New Providence Road. We had at least a day or more without any power at I guess it was just over a day, that there was no power for that light, which created a dangerous situation, and then we used one of the generators to power that. We had another generator used down at Barrow Hall to supply power for a charging station in the community. Now, this brings up a good point, that not everyone knew that we had a garage. Okay. That's information that hopefully we'll be able to communicate in a different fashion next time around. Well, the plan for the communication was primarily through our website, and unfortunately, not only did we lose power, but the server was down. Again, I'm not making excuses. I recognize we should probably do more, and I think we will do more. So that's just a quick, oh, and they also responded to 3 mutual aid responses, 2 in Westfield and 1 in Union, where they had fire calls that required assistance, and our town was able, again, a town of volunteers, were able to assist on those 3 different calls. So those are my comments.
Well,
I think we have one lady that would like to come up. I noticed they're migrating into the.
Hi there, good evening. I'm Shelley Drury from 127 Parkway. Again, I want to thank the police and fire and EMTs and the DPW, who I know did a great job. Again, I want to talk about communication, and I want to point out that the first few questions were about communication. And then Mr. Mirabelli and Mr. Turner talked for 20 minutes each about what everybody did in the town to make everything better. And what we asked for was, where was the communication? And what we got was, well, this is what we did, and we did this, and we did this, and we did this, and we did this, and we did this. That's not what we asked. We asked, where was the communication? And saying, well, the server was down, and we didn't have a Facebook, and we didn't have a Twitter. We had a storm last year. There's been plenty of time now. I don't know where the emergency management team is in the council. I know that there should be an emergency management plan put in place since last year. I don't know whether I can see it, where it is, what it consists of, but I know there's been plenty of time. I know that I prepared for myself. I had my Verizon Fios up and working, plugged in. I plugged it in. I didn't lose my Twitter for a second. I didn't lose my Facebook. I didn't lose any of my ways to communicate with my family back in England for 1 second. So scrambling in the middle of a storm is unacceptable. That's what I'd like to say. Now, I'm very, very happy and absolutely relieved that now we have, that it's been said that there's going to be a new committee and a media committee and a media, there's going to be some communication. I'm a little bit worried about the words hopefully and maybe. That just doesn't cut it. We need communication. Going into this storm, Mr. Mirabelli, you knew that only 1,500 people were signed up for UC First Alert. The only place that it was advertised was here in Borough Hall. If you happened to pass Borough Hall or came into Borough Hall, you knew about.
That's not true.
Where else was it
It was
advertised?
in the newsletter. And
In the newsletter.
Probably went out 4 to
Wasn't in the
6
post
times.
office, wasn't in the
Newsletter
schools.
is on
There were
Channel
plenty of
35.
other places it could.
It was mailed to everybody's home.
Okay,
Ms. Turner,
but
just
the
responding to your comment.
respond, and I'll respond back. You failed because only 1,500 people.
No, not at all.
I disagree.
Okay, so 4,500 people didn't get the message.
Or chose to ignore it.
Okay, so that one failed. So moving on, you knew that going into the storm, only 1,500 people were signed up for the communication that pretty much the only communication that you had relied on. You had the chance to do reverse 911. Wasn't put in place.
$50,000.
$50,000.
That's for reverse 911.
So here's the thing, maybe we can do a
The
fundraiser.
committee should determine.
It's something that could be, now, we had a storm last
Reverse
year.
911,
We had a
well, we
storm
have
last
phone
year.
service.
You had no phone service.
How do you get reverse 911?
I had phone nonstop, so, okay, so it could have been another 500 people. Then there could have been a Facebook page. That would have covered another 1,000 people. There are so many ways that,
Kelly, I'm gonna be the.
I didn't quite finish. What I'm saying, so moving forward, I'm very happy that there is going to be a committee. I'm just a little bit worried when Mr. Turner says, We didn't think we should communicate. It took 6 days.
I never said that.
Well, Mr. Mirabella said in the Star Ledger that rather than communicate, we should be clearing the roads. Now, Mr. Mirabelli said in the Star Ledger, we would rather clear the roads than communicate. Now, and you said rather than give wrong information, we would give no information.
For me to give out wrong information.
I think the mayor and council are missing something really big here, that you all spoke for 20 minutes each about what you did. We needed that information on day 1, day 2. It was 6 days before we got anything.
I don't think you need that information. What? No, wait.
We definitely need that information.
My question
We
is-
absolutely
my
need
question
that
is, what
information.
information
Anything.
you want?
I'll tell you what
You have no
information we
power,
want.
you knew that.
The mayor and the Teeth Turner told me some fantastic things about what happened. Mr. Decker, I would have loved it. Apparently, this is something that we just found out, that there was a woman called Susan who had a whole lot of women going around knocking on seniors' doors. Who is this woman? Where is she? Why don't we know about it? So, yeah, we don't know about it.
In times,
Identify who you are when you're gonna speak, please.
Marilyn Burney, 1131 Ridge Drive. I think one of the main things here is in a time of crisis, people need to know that there is a leader out there and what is being done for them. End of story.
I'm sorry.
I think that that's the bottom line here. And Mr. Turner,
Mr. Bernie, let me just explain. I will tell you that every single emergency that was called into police headquarters was addressed. That's what we're here for, emergencies, okay? Now, for us to call everyone and tell them they have no power,
no, Mr. Debbie.
or to give them information
Mr.
that
Debbie,
we
Mr. Debbie,
didn't know about.
Mr. Debbie, I'm sorry. That's exactly not what I'm saying. I'm saying that in a time of emergency, people want to know that something is being done to help their town and their constituents thrive once again. They look for that leadership. When there is silence, that can be taken as inaction. And I'm so happy that you were able to clear the roads and you did that. One of the things that does worry me, Mr. Turner, what you said, you're the officer of emergency management. You didn't know to fill your bathtub. You didn't know to have cash. You didn't know to have batteries. Seriously, I've lived through hurricanes my whole life.
It was my fault.
Okay, so just don't admit that. Okay, here's a PR thing. Don't admit it.
Listen, it's the truth.
But the fact of the matter is, you have a Honeywell system at the schools. We got some UC alerts that said Halloween was canceled. I got more information about Halloween than I did about anything else. I had enough of Halloween after day 6. Enough. I needed to know that there were conference calls going on, that we're working on your behalf just to know somebody's there. Anybody who was relying on me, and I don't have as many as you guys, but they got a phone call from me or they got an email from me from my phone saying, we're here if you absolutely need us. That's it. I'm going to leave it there. All I want you to understand is that people want to know that you're there.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Gail Friedman. I live on at 159 Mountain View Drive. And to address Mr. Debbie, because you had made the point, and perhaps everyone else. You all spoke very eloquently about the work that you did, and I will echo the woman who spoke before me. The piece that you perhaps are unable to understand is that while you were all in a position to communicate with someone who was in a position to make something happen, we were not. So as frustrating, Mr. Turner, as your communications may have been with PSC&G, you did have an enormous advantage of having those communications. Trust me, if you've not walked in my shoes, you can't know what they feel like. The most frustrating portion, we all knew it was dark, and we all knew it was a storm of unprecedented magnitude. And we all knew that there were people suffering far worse situations than ours were, as we all listened to the radio, certainly at the Jersey Shore. But what we did not know is that anyone here knew that we had a problem. That small piece of information, not useful, yes, I knew it was dark, and trust me, I knew exactly how cold it was in my house. But what I didn't know was that anyone else knew that. My phone calls to PSC&G as I'm sure everyone else's did, with a loop. In fact, I never even called PSC&G for the first 5 days because I figured I wasn't in such a bad shape and they had bigger problems to deal with than mine. But even into the second week and the 13th and the 14th day, I had no way of knowing that anyone could be reached. I had no way of knowing that anyone was responsive to that. And Mr. Lane, to your comment, I was without power for a week during Hurricane Irene. At that time, I got my information by going on the Westfield website, because living on this side of the highway, the information that's available from the New Providence and Berkeley Heights patch is not all that useful to me. They don't seem to think that I am part of this town. A year ago, I was relying on the Westfield's communication. Somewhere over the course of the year, to echo someone who spoke earlier, it must have occurred to someone on this council that if there was a system in place for communicating, it should have been implemented here. This is a very small town. That's one of its charms. I've only been a resident here for 4 years, having come from a neighboring community. I appreciate what this town has to offer, but I don't think that we can rely on piggybacking on communication from the towns that surround us and need to be responsible for our own. And I am perfectly willing to work on whatever your committee is, and I'll give you my card one more time.
Thank you for your comment.
Amy Raddick, 1300 Knollwood Road. The one thing I heard over and over again is that Mayor Skibitsky did a very good job in Westfield. I heard it from people who live there. I heard it from people on their police department, and that's all great. The thing that I think was the easiest and the cheapest thing that they did that could have served us very well is to make hard copy flyers of whatever information you had and find people to go door to door to deliver them. Don't make your police department do that. They have other things to do. But knock on my door and give me 100 flyers and tell me to go deliver them to my neighbors. I would have been happy to do that. It is inexpensive. It's easy. You should have done that. Simple.
Would have been unsafe.
Hi, I'm Donna Mans. I live at 1015 Charles Street in Mountainside. I understand you all had a lot to do. I think clear, concise communication was imperative. It didn't happen. We can learn from that. What are we going to learn? How can we move forward? It's not just the 8 people sitting here. I'm sure you heard tonight, it's everyone's best interest that we all get involved. We all participate. We can learn from the mayor in Westfield and the mayor in Summit, who did a great job. And that's not to throw stones at you, but we need to learn. We need your commitment that you want to move forward, that we can make an investment, and we can utilize the talent pool and the energy that is here in this room this evening. Thank you.
Anyone else? One more.
Hi, my name is Joe Yutsis. I live in Juniper Way, 242. And I just got back from yoga upstairs, so I'm really relaxed. There's 2 kinds of communications. One is what everybody here has been saying, which I hope you understand. The second is something that is visible. For example, one house up from me, there was a tree that fell 60 degrees, and was leaning up against the tree across the street. And it was being held up by 2 branches that didn't look too sturdy to me. Secondarily, the power line was only this far away. The next day it was this far away, the next day it was that far away. So I called up the town and let them know about that. Not one person came out there and put up any kind of warning. My fear was that the school would come back. The bus comes up Juniper Way every single day, and that bus would have hit that tree. And there was no stanchions, nothing. So the kind of communications that I'm talking about is visible, so that a human being in a car can look and see that this is a dangerous place to be, that I should either avoid it or have it blocked off. Now, when I called up the second time, my wife had already called and talked to somebody who was defensive, and I'm sure defensive because you guys were overwhelmed, and I'm not complaining about that.
Who are you calling, the police department?
No, the Public Works. But the gentleman, when I called up, I went to the town physically, and I went into the police department, and they told me that they would follow up on it. Within a half an hour, the director of the Public Works came out, and he definitely was busy as hell. But he was wise enough to say to me what we're all saying to you. Could you help me? And I said, you're darn right I could. And there were stanchions standing in the middle of the street up a half a block away doing absolutely nothing. They had no purpose. And he and I moved them to block off access to where that tree was to at least warn somebody that it's there. Around the corner was the large tree that fell right where the school entrance is, the driveway. And that was dangerous only because the power lines were hanging down, and I'm not sure if they were live, I'm sure they weren't, hanging down. But the fact is that the stanchion that was put there to warn people about it had no purpose. It was all the way on one side of the street so that you can drive straight through, and if a large truck came through there, it would have hit those lines and made it worse. And around the corner, my wife saw an elderly woman go in the middle of the street with lines hanging down, putting on, I guess she ripped up a handkerchief or something like that and tied it around the lines so that somebody could see them. And I'm saying, what good is that doing at night? And no street was blocked off, no stanchions. So all I'm asking for is that the town would go around, and now you made access to the roads, warn us that this is dangerous. That's it. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank everyone that came out tonight. We did hear you. I would also urge every single one of you to sign up for Union County First Alert. It's still out there. I'm still getting messages from them about disaster relief and other information. I think it's something that's very important that you do sign up for, and I do urge you all to do that. Again, if anyone wants to participate with the committee that's going to look at what we should do in the future, not hopefully, what we will do, then please contact or give your information to Jim Debbie. If you don't want to stay tonight to do that, you can certainly drop off the information either at Borough Hall during the week or even with the police dispatch. Okay? Thank you very much for coming tonight.
I've already received some emails from members, which is good. Thank you. Mr. Mortimer, I need your names and like
alert message.
let me give you my email.
If you don't mind, we need to finish our meeting. If you could go out in the hallway, we would appreciate it, please.
Okay.
If you want to come forward, Frank, I think you have a presentation for us.
No one stayed for it.
I know.
Yeah, thanks, I appreciate it. What I'd like to present to the mayor and council is a check from the Union County Recreation Trust Grant for $31,500. The borough, oh, I'm sorry, let me talk to the mic.
Yes, please.
Not loud enough? The borough and two of the associations in town applied for this grant. The projects that the funding, which is it's a matching grant, are going to go towards are the recreation department portion is going to be patching and the recoding of the Borough Hall tennis court here at Borough Hall, the back courts. Mountainside Softball Association is purchasing equipment and storage unit at the youth softball field and expanding the existing snack bar and modifying the junior division field so it conforms to the softball standards. And Mountainside Youth Baseball is approving the drainage at the American field and along the batting cage, and also replace the backstop at both the Pony League field and the American League field. So I'd like to hand it over to you, put it in front of you. Whatever would you like?
We'll take it.
Don't try and catch that. Yeah, don't talk, yeah.
Okay, next we got approval of minutes. We have minutes for the regular and executive session meeting of October 16th, 2012. We have a motion, we have a second. Poll the council.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Next, we have the work session meeting of November 6th, 2012.
So moved. Second.
Poll the council, please.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Next, we have Resolution 127, 2012. Keith?
Resolution 127, 2012, having received payment for a tax sale certificate number 12-00076 for Block 7.A, Lot 1.A, in the amount of $35,026.76, plus a premium of $57,000. The Borough Tax Collector, Jill Good, recommends that the total amount be issued to the tax sale lien holder, FWDSL and Associates, 5 Cold Hill Road, Suite 11, Mendham, New Jersey, for the redemption and cancellation of the said certificate. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Poll the council.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Next, we have Resolution 129, 2012. Glenn?
128?
128, I think it's.
Did we do 128, 2012. Bob?
Under NJSA 1944A-20.4, this resolution authorizes the Borough's purchasing agent Marco Lopez to enter into a contract with Maverick Building Services for cleaning service at various borough buildings for the period of 1 year with an option to extend the contract to an additional year. So moved.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Poll the council.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Okay, now 129, 2012. Glenn?
Okay, it's a resolution of the Borough Council, the Borough of Mountainside, and the County of Union, New Jersey, in compliance with provisions of Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended, applicable to the exclusion from gross income for federal income tax purposes of the interest on obligations issued by the Borough of Mountainside, authorizes the mayor, borough clerk, chief financial officer, and other borough officials to take such action as they may deem necessary or advisable to effect such compliance, and designating a $3,244,000 bond anticipation note dated November 2nd, 2012, and payable November 1st, 2013, as a qualified tax-exempt obligation pursuant to Section 265B3 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Poll the council, please.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Next, we have Resolution 130, 2012. Deanna?
This resolution will authorize Borough Engineer Michael Disco Jr. to advertise for bids for the borough's yearly pothole contract, not to exceed $25,000.
Got a motion, we got a second?
Second.
Poll the council, please.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Next, we have Resolution 131, 2012. Bill?
Having received payment for tax sale certificate 12-00077 for block 7.A, lot 1.B, in the amount of $5,936.06, plus a premium of $2,000. Borough Tax Collector Jill Good recommends that the total amount be issued to the tax sale lien holder, FWDSL and Associates LP, 5 Cold Hill Road, Suite 11, Mendham, New Jersey, 07945, for the redemption and cancellation of said certificate.
Second.
Poll the council, please.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Next, we have Resolution 132, 2012. Deanna?
Having received 3 bids for the sale of the borough's surplus vehicle, Borough Clerk Martha Lopez recommends the sale be awarded to the highest bidder, that being Grace Quality Used Cars, 945 Lincoln Highway, Morrisville, Pennsylvania, for 2007 Girardin bus in the amounts of $5,656.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Come on, guys, let's go. Wake up.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Okay, next we have 133, 2012.
Resolution 133, 2012, having emergency medical dispatch, better known as EMD, go through Overlook Hospital, which is known as CENTCOM, recently closed. This resolution will allow the borough, at the recommendation of the chief of police, to enter into a contract with County of Union as a shared service agreement for the purpose of emergency medical dispatch only. Again, it's not our whole dispatch center, it's for emergency medical dispatch only for a 3-year term with 2 additional single-year renewals in the amount of $5,500 each year. So moved.
Motion, we have a second.
Second.
Poll the council.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Next, we have Resolution 134, 2012. Bob?
Yes, at the recommendation of the Mountainside Mayor and Council, this resolution will waive all construction permit fees for all repairs to structural damage and generators installed as a result of Hurricane Sandy for a period of 1 year. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Poll the council, please.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Bills and claims, Bill. Oh, Bill, Glenn, I'm sorry.
It's been a long night. Be it resolved by the mayor and council of the borough of Mountainside that the following bills of the person's name in the amount stated below have been duly audited and found to be correct this 20th day of November 2012. The same be paid after the council's review if and when funds are available. That the mayor, council president, administrator, or treasurer hereby authorize the director to sign with regards to the same. Total $1,454,693.51.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Poll the council, please.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Okay, I guess we're down to council comments. I don't know if anyone has any additional comments that they would like to make, Bill?
I actually just have a question for clarification, and I think it's probably something we should have on Channel 35 anyway. With respect to the tax payments for the 4th quarter
Deadline was today.
deadline, so we did extend,
We
due to
did.
the storm, we extended the deadline for tax.
From November 10th to November 20th, which was yesterday.
Okay.
Today.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, I just have one quick comment. I was glad to hear the residents come tonight. I do agree with a lot of the things they said, not 100% of what they said. I think residents going door to door a day or 2 after a storm or 3 days after a storm with downed wires, I think could be very dangerous. So, I mean, we are gonna, the committee that we're gonna put together will, hopefully with the help of some of those people that came up to spoke this evening. If there was one area that we were lacking, and we all realize that, don't think for one minute, you know, we weren't aware that we all wanted to get better communication out to you, and hopefully the committee that was formed will allow us to do that during the next storm, and there will be a next storm, unfortunately. So we hear you, we understand, we look forward to your input, and And that's all I have to say about it.
Anyone else? I think we do have some members of the audience that want to make some comments that are not storm-related, or maybe they are storm-related, or?
Yeah, well, some yes, some not. My name is Kurt Mans. I live at 1015 Charles Street. I'll start out on a real good note tonight. I know you ladies and gentlemen have had a lot of work lately, so I want to wish you in advance to have a happy Thanksgiving. Get off to a more good start here, you know. But to go back to the storm for a minute, I'd like to see if I can enlist some help from the board, and then I have some comments about something else. There's a lot of dead trees in the Watchung Reservation, and for several years I've called the county to try to note to them that they're dead, they could fall. We don't need a big catastrophic storm like this. It's something obvious, it's something in our face. And I was wondering, I've called several times, and they always say, yeah, we know about them, we're gonna take care of them, and it never gets done. I could take any of you up there at any time, drive you around, and I'm sure you'd say, there's one, there's one, there's one. So, I don't wanna make a big issue about it tonight, but is there something that the town could do on behalf of the residents like myself that drive through that park and enjoy it, to see if they could rectify that so somebody doesn't get killed or injured or something like that? It would be appreciated.
I think that's a great point, and I don't know whether that's ever been addressed with the county, but I mean, especially now, after that storm, I mean, even before that storm, you go, drive through there and you see all those.
Yeah, you're saying it like, whoa, what if? So if you could do that, I would be appreciative. On a second issue, you know, there's been a thing before the board and the town about things going on in the light industry zone. I've appeared before it, I've been to the planning board. We know there's a contention there. I don't want to talk about that litigation or anything tonight, specifically about that one situation. But there has been a committee formed that's going to address changes in the light industry zone, and I commend that. It's part of your obligation. I think, Keith, you brought it up last time, that you can't just look at one side of it. You have to look at the town and say, we need new revenue. I agree with that, and I think most of the people that were against that particular project there agree with that. You have to do something constructive. Now, since a committee's been formed, I realize the town is under no obligation to ask for outside help from me or anybody else in the town. But would you consider comments along the way? Because tonight was a good segue for me. People volunteered to be on a committee, and you all seem to be quite open to it. So would you be open somewhere along the line to get public input on that? You don't have to answer that now, but would you be open to it? Because I'd like not to get involved in a third kind of a situation where the board passes something, thinks it's good for everybody, and then finds out later on everybody's against it. So just consider that at least, you know. And I also have some suggestions, even if you don't take that one, that there's a lot of things that go on in the light industry zone, and the planning board imposes rules like let's have fences, let's maintain certain noise levels, hours, things like that, plantings and buffer zones. They have not been well enforced. I'm just going to bring up a specific example because I'm sure somebody will ask about, and the gentleman back there that's going like this right now can answer to it. Camp Bow Wow was approached. You might know that, you might not. And during that testimony, the public brought up that the fences were down along that waterfront property, you know, the water company property there. Immediately, the owner jumped up and said, well, I'm going to take care of it right away. It's winter. You can't expect me to do it now. I'll do it in the spring. That fence was down 2 years prior to that testimony. It is now 3 years later, and the fence hasn't been repaired. Now, I'm not being critical of the board here, you know, but I'm just saying what capability or types of situations can the town do so that when there are things imposed on a company that's a neighbor of ours, that it'll be enforceable. Behind my home and one of my neighbor's homes, there was a company about 10 years ago that I had no objection to going in there. I realize it's a zone and they met all the criteria, and they promised to put up a buffer. Trees were supposed to be planted. They were planted. They died. I approached the owner of the business and said, the trees died. And he goes, yeah, I planted them. Now, I know enough about the building industry that there's guarantees and warranties, but they were never replaced. I then approached the town on 3 occasions. Could they help me? Nothing happened. So I hope that if you're going to make changes to the light industry zone, that you look at enforceability of the rules you impose on everybody. Just like if I have a pool and I have to have a fence around it, the town has the right to come to me and say, hey, the fence is in there. But it doesn't seem to work that way in the LI zone. At 270 Sheffield Street, which was the cellar to Triborough, that fence has been down over 14 months, and the town's aware of it. So when we question testimony by experts that come in and say, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, you have to understand the direction we're coming from, because we see that there's really no, or at least there hasn't been, an enforcement capability. So I'd like you to consider that. And then last, I hope that this committee that's formed, and I'm sure they're going to try to do a good job to keep the character of the town the way it is, that they try not to pass, and it's just my personal opinion, zoning that just accomplishes trying to get one kind of business in there. For instance, one of the applicants for the Triborough thing wanted a higher building. I hope that when you do your new zoning, that you don't just try to put bigger buildings in there. And the reason I emphasize that is when the people moved into areas surrounding this type of zone, there was a certain expectation. In other words, there's sort of a norm, you know, the way things are. Most of the businesses work from 7 or 8 in the morning, go to 4, 5, 6 in the afternoon, and yes, occasionally overtime. But they weren't high turnover businesses where every 20, 30 minutes there were cars going in and out. They weren't businesses that ran basically from 7 in the morning till 11 at night. Now, Mr. Turner, you brought up a good point once that sometimes we can over-exaggerate things, and I think we all get emotional sometimes in the heat of the moment, and you say things and you go like, yes, but you had mentioned something that when the baseball field and the lights went in, everybody made a big deal about it, I believe, and then it wasn't such a big deal. I can't comment on that because I don't live there, so I'm not going to say I would know yes or no to that particular thing you suggested. But I might suggest to you, when you commented about what I had said last time, that baseball games don't go on 12 months of the year. Baseball games don't start at 7 in the morning on Saturday or Sunday or weekdays. Baseball games don't go on every hour on the hour, 7 to 11. So I hope that, and I say this respectfully to everybody, that when you have this committee, whoever's on it, and I don't know who it is, that yes, you think about taxes because that's an obligation you have to all in the community. But I also think you have an obligation to the people in the community that it's going to have a possible detrimental effect on. And I don't think you just can negate that and say, well, we're getting more taxes, therefore you're going to have to suffer the consequences. Because when I moved into that area, it's very, very quiet. Believe it or not, sometimes living in that area is quieter than having a neighbor behind you, and they know you won't believe that. In fact, during the planning board meeting, because there was so much testimony by the applicant about the noise and the traffic and all this, that I challenged the committee. I said, let's leave here. It's 10 o'clock at night. And let's go stand in that street and have a meeting. And I'll guarantee you, not one car will go down that street. Nobody wanted me to take me up on it. Now, first of all, they didn't want to go there with me. But I think they knew that what I was saying was true, that another venue in there, a high-usage venue, would create this constant traffic. So I hope that you look at the things you want to look at and the tax revenues and good business. I'm all for that. But I hope you'd also try to develop a more campus style, maybe coming up with suggestions of, better buffer zones than you have now. And try to get companies that'll like that kind of thing. Because I took the opportunity recently
to go to many other towns, in Berkeley Heights, New Providence, Bridgewater, and I look at some of their business zones, and they're really sort of nice. They don't have to be 3-story buildings and high in and out kind of things, and you can still attract businesses. So I don't want to belabor the point. I hope you'll do the right thing, and you know the players that are against certain types of venues in there, and I hope that you'll take the opportunity, just like you did with these people in communications tonight, in helping the town, that you'll reach out to some of the people around the light industry zone, because there's more people interested now than before, because now it's going to affect the whole zone, not just Charles, Briarwood, and Willow. So I hope you'll reach out, maybe visit some people and say, here's what we're thinking. We don't have the power, we realize, to maybe stop everything every time or impose our will on you, but we'd like you to at least reach out to us, find out what the downside is, not just the upside. So I appreciate it, and again, have a good holiday.
Thank you.
Good night.
John, you just want to address what the process is going to be so he understands, because there is a process where there will be notice of when we start to talk about the changes in those regulations. And,
But will that finalization be, will we be able to comment after it's all sort of done, or along the way, is what I'm saying?
Both.
Oh,
Both.
so how will we be
The
notified
first
of that?
step, the first step will be that there will be planning board deliberations
Okay.
and consideration by the planning board as to what recommendations should be made to the governing body that would entail amendments to the permitted uses in the LI zone. So, and those deliberations by the planning board will be public, and anybody who has an interest will be able to participate at the planning board level in those deliberations. And then the planning board will make recommendations to the governing body as to amendments to be made to the zoning ordinance for the LI zone. And the governing body will have a public hearing with respect to any action that it chooses to take that would entail an amendment to the zoning ordinance. So there will be really two opportunities, and when I said both, in answer to your question, the first instance is the planning board level. The second instance, the more definitive instance, would be when this governing body then takes up whatever the planning board recommends, discusses it, and decides what action by way of amending the zoning ordinance it's going to take.
Okay, thanks. And there's one, if I might have 30 seconds, because I got so wrapped up in this and you were listening so attentively that I forgot to say something. I said one of the comments to a lot of people during some of this thing that was going on there was that, well, you should have known better. You live near the L1 zone. And I inferred before that, well, we moved there and there were certain things, there was a certain way you get to expect it. It's the same thing in a residential zone, and I'm going to make a point quickly. People move into a neighborhood and expect houses to be this big and this high. You notice, and you've, I believe, made an amendment now, that you don't want houses this big and this high. And it would be unfair to go to people and say, wow, you moved in a neighborhood, you should have known there could be giant houses here. You saw fit later on to correct that. Well, it's the same thing. We live near certain businesses. We expect certain things, or we've gotten used to it at least. And then all of a sudden, for somebody to come and say, well, now you can have a 3-story building there instead of a 2-story building, and it's going to be noisier than it ever was, you can understand why people get a little irate. So the same wisdom that prevailed when you said, let's not have houses that are bigger and stronger and wider and use up more property, I hope you take that same concept, at least in a constructive way, and I'm trying to be positive here, that you take that same concept and say, we got to apply some of that common sense rule to what we do in these zones where we have residents that are taxpayers boarding it. Thank you.
There are, Mr. Menz, there are height restrictions in those zones as well. They can't just build.
In the L1 zone, but,
Sure.
but the variance that was granted made that particular building, which was a 2-acre size building, as high as the Diamond Head building. Now, you imagine that, taking that building by Route 22 and putting it 75, 80 feet from a property line. you can understand why at least, and I realize I'm not on the board, but you can understand why people would get upset. And it's not like a baseball game. If you want to have a baseball game behind my house, you could have it, but I didn't want that. So I'm not here to belabor the point. I just ask that you kindly consider those feelings when you do it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, no?
Oh, throw it over. No. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have any other comments? I just have to, I'm sitting here just thinking about, especially some of the comments from the last two people that came before the board. And I have to take offense at the fact that they did not see the leadership in this town. All you gotta do is drive around and see what the state of this town was within a couple of days afterwards to know that somebody was doing the right thing. The public works, the police, the fire, the rescue, our tree crews, all being orchestrated by us as leaders. So I certainly take offense at that comment. I also take offense at the portrayal in the article that was done by the Star Ledger. When I gave that interview, I gave much more information about the information that was coming out, the Union County First Alert, the information that was being given to the residents directly from our police dispatch. As I said before, there was over 3,900 calls, and they were giving out the information. So for people to sit here and say that there was no leadership, I take offense at that. I think we did a fantastic job. I do admit that we could do a better job in getting some communication out. The real problem with getting the communication out, and I know this was for a fact in Westfield, some of the information that they put out was just simply not correct. I was very concerned about the information that I was getting from PSE&G because it was just not something that we could rely upon. The only thing we could rely upon, and that's what we repeatedly told people, is that they said we'd have power between 7 and 9 days. With that, I have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second. Meeting adjourned.